Welcome to the channel. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Today we have a watch brand all the way from the USA. Now this watch brand specializes in military watches, the main one being the A11, and they have a very interesting backstory. They feature a war veteran called Tom Rice who actually lost his watch in the war, and they actually sat down with him and they helped him recreate the watch that he actually had. Now this is not that Tom Rice version. This is a different version that they do. As I said, they specialize in the A11 military types, and this is the A11 spec 2C. Now you won't find this particular watch on the website. That's because it's actually called the A11 AmeriQuartz version. Now, in line with the backstory, the brand, which is called Praesidus, they do actually support war veterans and different associations, and therefore they actually also give 5% of each of the sales to various war veteran organizations. And you guys already know, when I review micro brands, if they actually come with a backstory and they actually fund a purpose, I do really like those kind of brands because they do have a story, and micro brands generally don't have an origin or something behind them, so it gives them a bit of heritage, I guess, even though these are fairly new brands, or it gives them a purpose, so to say. So let's open this up. Let's have a quick look at the packaging. I mean, very environmentally friendly. As a note, it's all cardboard, which I'm pretty positive is recyclable. And then you got your basic box here in a nice old sleeve, and you open it up. There you have the watch. You got some nicely placed tabs there, which also gives you a instruction manual and the international warranty. Now this looks a bit padded, so I want to know what's in there. Let's get this out of here. So okay, the warranty is on, well, that's quite cool actually. I haven't seen this kind of warranty card before. So it's a dog tag, which is basically your warranty card, and then you've got a QR code which, if you scan, will take you to, I'm guessing, the warranty details. So that is pretty cool, and it's something that you don't see, and beautifully linked with the actual brand. So I like that a lot. I did not know that was in there, so that is pretty awesome from Praesidus. Now, I've done quite a lot of military watch reviews on the channel. Well, not a lot, but I've done a fair few, and I've got to know more about military watches. As you guys know, I'm pretty new to the watch game in totality, and then I went to homages. So while I can't really relate to all the military watches and the nostalgia behind that, I can definitely appreciate it. And we've got some really good brands also on AliExpress, like Bolton, etc., that can cover that niche of this watch market. So instantly, this watch is definitely going to appeal to the guys that find these historically vintage watches very appealing. And more often than not, the guys that are watching this video will know shed loads more about military watches than I will. So I'm going to focus on the watch and give you the information that I can, based off their website and obviously my own dealings and how I feel about the watch in hand. Now, this watch actually comes in two different dimensions. You've got a 32mm and a 40mm. Now, I went for the 32mm because the older military watches were actually a lot closer to these smaller sizes, and we've seen a lot of military watches which are quite big, and the true die-hard fans out there in the comment section do point that out. So this is probably going to be maybe the most accurate military watch out there, coming in at such a small size. Now, spec-wise, this does come with a double dome mineral glass. You've got 50 meters of water resistance. You've got a blasted stainless steel case with some polished highlights. As you guys can see, it does come on a vintage, worn, distressed effect leather strap. And this watch is a quartz watch. It's actually produced by a company called AmeriQuartz. As I said, this watch is from the USA, so it is assembled in the USA with imported parts. They're quite transparent and clear about that. However, the movement is American. The movement is a 6130 quartz movement. Pretty small, as you can see. It fits in a 32mm case pretty well. And it has around a 3.5-year battery life. Quartz is always accurate. It's much preferred. You do also have a hacking function, and it is actually dateless, or no ghost position. And one thing with quartz, it's going to be very reliable, pick up and go. And this being a military style watch, that's what you want. Now, in terms of price for this piece, you are looking at around $215 or around 172 Great British pounds, which I think it's more than reasonable considering the amount of work that had to go into it. Recreating cases, getting the mineral glasses right, sourcing movements, assembly as well within the US. And yet there's a heap of nostalgia behind this. And I do really like the design. I like the dimensions of this. As I said, normally we see the smallest is around 36mm that we've seen them, but this being a 32, and you know, in this day and age, that looks absolutely small. But you've got to remember back in the day when watches were first bought in for the military to use. I think that was the first application, as with most things, that they were tiny. You know, they weren't much bigger than this. They were actually quite a lot smaller. Now, one thing interesting about this watch is actually the minute track around there. Apparently, you cannot find this Ministry of Defense style railway track or on these dials. And what you can also see, which is like some of the finer details, if I just zoom in slightly, just have a look at the numerals. They've got this sort of aging on there, this 14 applied, which does give it the impression of a much older watch. You've got your numerals around the dial, obviously, and the watch dial is something different as well. It's not completely centered. You can see a bit more of a gap there than one side. Now, I don't know if that's something visual, just due to the box style sapphire crystal, but it doesn't look so. And I think it gives it that sort of rough around the edges look as well. You know, I'm assuming, I think back then when they made watches, they probably weren't as precise in the design. However, I do know they had, you know, very strict regulations to adhere to. And the crown size is quite nice, considering the watch is only 32mm in diameter. You've got overall thickness of just 10.5mm. That seems just slightly large in comparison to the diameter, but that is due to that domed mineral glass and the case back, which just protrudes slightly. The lug to lug is extremely compact, which you'd expect with 32mm diameter. It's at 38mm, and you've got a 16mm lug width. And the crown is 6mm in comparison, so you need that. If you had a much smaller crown, it's difficult to operate, definitely. And because this is a recreational military watch, you know, you also need some practicality in there. So I think design-wise, they've ticked all the boxes if you were in the market for a very precise or accurate military recreational watch. Now, strap-wise, as I mentioned, it is that vintage style distressed leather watch strap. It's quite thick, so it would be quite solid. They also have included quick release spring bars, just to give it that bit of modernization. So before we get this on wrist, let's have a look at the lume, because they do make a point of saying they've increased the lume on this. They've used Swift Super Lume Nova. Let's see how bright that is then. Now, unfortunately, the lume doesn't really stand out as much as it should do. I mean, one, the camera doesn't seem to pick up very low lume. The only thing I could pick up with the camera, as you can see for yourselves, is just the handset and that tip on the second hand. Now, there's a very faint outline around the numerals. So when I took a picture, for some reason the camera likes pictures better on lume. You can see the crisp outlines on all the numerals, which are illuminated. Now, on wrist, the watch looks absolutely tiny, which you'd expect it to, but it does make my wrist look massive. My wrist size is 6.5 inches, and you can see like the whole watch is well within the center. And I can see why watches were a lot smaller, because it fits well into the wrist. Obviously you got a whole era of nostalgia behind it. You know, got a vintage looking watch. It's very light. The leather strap is nice and thick, so you can really feel it holding onto your wrist. And yeah, it's small, which is what it's designed to be. And I think, you know, as I said in the start of the video, it's one for the military spec watch enthusiasts. It's one for the war enthusiasts, or if there's any war veterans around us, it's definitely one for them. You know, they can really appreciate this watch. As somebody from, you know, the new era, I don't mind how it wears. As I said, it's small, but it's actually not that bad. It's legible, and you know, it does look perfectly vintage, and it's definitely maybe a talking piece, or just a watch that kind of goes unnoticed, or a bit of a daily if you wanted it as one. So it is a watch definitely worth considering if that is what your collection looks like and you're interested in these military spec watches. You know, it is probably the most authentically reproduced. And when I say that from limited knowledge, you know, as Praesidus reached out to me, but I know there are quite a lot of, or there must be very, very niche or bespoke, you know, military watch recreational experts, which you guys probably know about. But from Praesidus for £172 or $215, I think it's a good shout, and the fact that the brand does have some connection to, you know, the war veterans. They're not just, I don't know, living off, you know, old legacy or something. They have kind of made an effort to reach out to some veterans, or that Tom Rice collaboration they did. So that is quite cool to actually know about, and to know about this brand. So that's it from me today, guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and I'll see you on the next video.